President, the MSU system, msuiit Chancellor, Chancellors of the various MSU units, members of the Board of Regents, the Iligan, the representative, the Iligan City Mayor, Professor Lorna Oxendia Tolentino, candidates for graduation, dear parents, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Borders define limits or boundaries. Borders enclose us, but they also protect us from the perils of the outside. We typically think of borders in physical terms, such as the geographical limits of a nation or a country. But borders are not always physical. They can also be cultural, intellectual, language-based, technological, religious, or institutional. When you started your studies here, you went beyond the borders of your neighborhood, your town, your province. You went beyond your circle of friends, acquaintances, and friends, and relatives, beyond your usual way of life. But you had at the same time forged friendships and relationships with your fellow students, the faculty, this hallowed institution, and more. Perhaps you were scared then, the unknown, as I was when I left my hometown of Dumaguete City to study in Baguio City in the far north of our country. Ilocano, which I did not understand, was the primary language there. At the same time, there were other languages that I was exposed to. Aside from the language, regional culture, food, and other aspects of life of the Ilocanos, the Ibanags, the Igorots, the Pangasinenses, the Kapampangans, the Galogs, and more were so different from what I was used to as a provincial Visayan lowlander. Without being aware of it then, I had gone beyond many of my cultural borders, language, and relationships. But as I learned and immersed myself in other cultures and way of life, I was able to appreciate the richness of our diversity. So one lesson learned. Going beyond my regional borders allowed me to discover, appreciate, and even assimilate many new cultures. Even schooling and instruction were different in college compared to high school. In high school, we were practically spoon-fed with information. At the start of the school year in high school, we were already provided with a complete set of books. But in college, I had to learn to borrow books from the library, from teachers, from classmates, from upperclassmen, and from friends. I had to do my own research with less guidance from my teachers. At first, I found it difficult, but soon I experienced the joy of discovering things for myself. Going beyond the borders of my stereotypes about high school instruction taught me a better way of learning. Right after graduating from college, I was fortunate to be granted a scholarship to pursue my master's degree in a university in Europe, where I was exposed to more radically different cultures, languages, people. But that was not the cause of my anxiety. Rather, on the first day of classes, I saw that the institute where I was assigned was so technically advanced. So my research work, all I had to do was submit samples and automated instruments which view out the results of analysis at the other end on the printer. Whereas during my college days, we performed this laboratory analysis manually. Nevertheless, I later discovered that I could rely on these manual skills when the laboratory instruments were overloaded or had broken down. My classmates actually envied my ability to perform the chemical analysis manually. Another lesson learned. going beyond borders to a technologically advanced place showed that the skills and capabilities I had acquired remained useful and effective. The method of instruction in Europe was likewise very different from what I was used to, even in college. While I deemed myself to be competent enough to study and research on my own, I soon found out that it was not enough. Aside from doing my own research, I found out that I had to learn, that what I had need to do was to learn by doing. Once, my professor briefly explained the principle in water treatment and gave me a list of references to study, and then he instructed me to get water from a nearby river and make it potable by applying the principles that I had learned. When I finally succeeded in making the sample of river water clean enough for drinking, I discovered a new method of instruction, learning by doing. I would not have discovered this unless I was willing to go beyond the borders of my usual way of learning. For 4 years or more, you have been sheltered within the confines of your school. During that time, your school has educated you, led you out of the darkness of ignorance into the light of knowledge. Now, your alma mater has deemed you well enough prepared to go beyond the borders of this academic institution. As you go beyond and leave the borders of your alma mater, many of you may be wondering and worried if you could find jobs relevant and appropriate to your academic education, whether in the private industry or in the public sector. When I completed my studies, I too worried about the same thing, finding a decent, well-paying job. I was then tempted to extend my stay in the university with its now familiar routines. Maybe you too are tempted to stay behind to pursue further studies. But like you, I was also excited to finally work in the real world, to go beyond and leave behind the borders of the academic institution. And in the end, the allure of the excitement of working in the real world won out for me, as I think it will be likewise with many of you. So going beyond the borders of the academic world into my first job in the private sector, my immediate supervisor was a sanitary engineer, while I was and still am a chemical engineer. We had different methods of designing treatment plants, but surprisingly, we ended up with similar designs. Thus I learned that applying different professional approaches does not necessarily mean different outcomes if the objectives are the same. There is therefore nothing to fear in going beyond the borders of your profession or academic training and embracing new and different ways of doing things. Later, when I went to work in Saudi Arabia, I was literally going beyond the borders, not only of the Philippine territory, but also of our Philippine culture. Fortunately, we Filipinos are highly adaptable and get along well with other people and cultures. Although there were radical differences in culture, we adjusted and managed well. Working abroad also meant going beyond the borders of my technological training and expertise and my preconceived notions of my capabilities. I was working with mostly British and some American engineers. Except for the difference in the salary scale, I am proud to say that the Filipino engineer can stand toe-to-toe and perform as well or even better than an engineer of any other nationality. There's nothing to fear. Then, in going beyond the borders of our technological expertise or academic training. In short, we can cope and we can even thrive when we go beyond our cultural, intellectual, technological, or institutional borders. But there is one insidious border that often severely limits us. This is the border of our unconscious lack of self-confidence in ourselves and in our abilities. Because it is unconscious, we often believe, without question, when our brains seem to tell us that something is beyond our capabilities, our knowledge, our skills, or expertise. As a result, we do not even bother to try. Were it not for the encouragement and inspiration of my wife, Beth, I would not have dared to stand up here in front of you. Why? Because I was struck by the boundaries of my preconceived notions and stereotypes. My stereotype of an engineer is one who has poor English language skills and is not a capable speaker in public. So I was afraid that I was not confident enough to stand here in front of you. But her faith in me was enough to help me overcome my fears and apprehension. As you go forth beyond your borders, allow me to share 5 guidelines in life that I learned from a truly inspiring person. He was a successful stockbroker who gave up his wealth and became a priest in his mid-30s to minister to the poor. He went beyond the borders of his materialistic lifestyle to dedicate his life to others. And here are the guidelines that he gave me. Live for the eternal. For those who believe in an eternal afterlife, this physical life is only a short stint. The more important lifetime is still to come. For those who do not believe in afterlife, I offer this advice. Consider the long term. For example, you may want now to have an iPad too, but you cannot afford it, and therefore you get frustrated and angry. But if you look at the long term, say for example, a couple of years from now, the iPad 2 may no longer be a desirable gadget. But certainly then, it will be quite within your capability to afford one. When you take the long-term view, therefore, everything falls into proper perspective and proportion. Second guideline, be faithful. When you are faithful to your parents, to your family, to your friends, to your employer, to your spouse, you will not do anything to hurt or harm them, and you will be at peace with yourself. Third, be a blessing to others. Do good to everyone, not only those dear to you, but to every person who crosses your path. Fourth, it pays to do the right thing. When you have gone beyond the borders of your alma mater into the workplace, you may be exposed to many situations. You may have to choose between, say, being honest or getting rich. Doing the right thing will pay you back 100-fold. Finally, put relationships first. People matter more than things. We know we cannot bring any possession with us when we die. Yet, we act as if we could, accumulating material possessions throughout our life to the point of disregarding the people in our lives. The more you possess, the more you worry that somebody would steal your possessions or that you would lose them. How can you be happy when you are always worried that you would lose these things? True happiness comes not from our possessions, but from our relationship with others. No material possession can match the joy of laughter shared with friends. No expensive jewelry can ease the pain of a broken heart, as well as the friend's shoulder to cry on. I've been trying to encourage you to live beyond your borders because there is really nothing to fear. Yet now I must warn you that there are borders beyond which you will never go. These borders that you must not cross are the borders or boundaries of truth, honesty, decency, ethics, morality, justice, and fairness. Going beyond the borders does not mean cutting your ties with your family, your friends, your birthplace, your country, your culture, or your faith. Rather, your ties will keep you grounded and will lead you back to the people who care for you, who nurture you, and most of all, who love you. Let us therefore take this opportunity to express our gratitude to these people who have toiled to make this day possible because they love you. Let us offer a round of applause to our parents and benefactors.